That's a good question that makes a lot of sense. Uh, and I would say that moving to the tropics has been influential. South America was a powerful injection of another culture and another world. But moving to Miami at the time that I did, uh, it has a different power. I mean, I, I because I came here, I began making those inflatable sculptures. Now they historically, I started making translucent sculptures with bamboo and a paper that I had acrylicized with gloss medium and could paint and draw and print on. And I was making, already making sculpture that was kind of related to the inflatables. But the inflatable was a genre that I was introduced to by a Cuban artist here in Miami for a very specific event. He put 10 artists together, and I said yes. That's part of my character. I say yes, and then I figure out how to do it, as opposed to do things that make sense to me. I'll try anything, I'm kind of open-ended on that end. And so as soon as I made my first inflatable, the morning of Art Basel, we were doing this show at Bayfront Park with these inflatables, and they reproduced my inflatable on the front page of the Miami Herald. Was on there it was, and I said, well, these things have impact. Plus, every other inflatable that I saw showed me things that I hadn't thought about in my own work, and I could see lots of opportunities in front of me. I said, this is a medium that I can do things with because uh, a long-standing issue in my work was interactivity, trying to get people to interact with the work. So I made paintings that you had to physically open and close to see what was on the inside. I made paintings, I did these installations that you walk through. And so I was really interested in that idea of extending the exhibition space to non-artists, so to speak, And so the inflatables came about, and then the kind of use of color here is really up much higher chroma. People move to Miami and they get rid of all their old furniture because it doesn't work in this light-filled environment with all the light and glass and all the rest of that. So I would say those are a couple of things that have affected me. The other thing is that Miami has if you cities like Philadelphia, maybe Cleveland or Cincinnati, you have this hierarchical structure. Miami, there is nothing. Complete crap can be seen right next to really wonderful stuff, and there's no system to figure it out. I mean, it's really bling is an important thing. If it's shiny and it works, kind of thing. And so I've acknowledged that culture and allowed it to have an impact. I think mostly the thing that's come about is the value of street art, and my work can be exhibited on the street. And that's how I would say the one thing that I've gotten from I'm sitting here talking to you in Wynwood. I don't know another place in the world like Wynwood. I mean, all the artwork they're building these new multi-million dollar buildings, and they're including art making in the building on the outsides. And, I never saw a place like this before. I mean, it's really kind of ugly and chaotic on one level, but it's magnificent on another level. When I first came here and they started having these murals all around me, I ran into Paul Ressica in New York on 11th Avenue at a gallery, and I hadn't seen Paul in a really long time. And he says to me, it's great to see you. What have you been doing? And I said, Paul, I've moved to a place where they paint on the walls, and the paintings are changing all the time. And as I'm telling him this story, a tear is running down his face. And I realized I was talking almost as if I was explaining a land of fantasy to a man who dreamt of a magical land like Tinkerbell or something. Uh, I realized that this is a special place because of it really has no borders and it these things and there's you were talking there's this guy here in Miami who was the graphic artist for Pink Flamingos, and he was the graphic artist for all of the early films of John Waters. And he left John Waters and he went to New York where he worked at National Lampoon. And he was responsible originally for that wonderful poster of Divine with that dress that they used for the films. But he went to the National Lampoon and he's responsible for that image of the dog with the gun to its head, and it said, "Buy this magazine or we'll shoot this dog." And you know, and his name is Randy Berman, and he's here in Miami, and he's got this roof, this huge building here, which they've painted this. He does these poem things, he's interested in poems, so he painted this enormous poem on the roof of a building, and as the planes fly in, you can see it, and it says, "I come from a place where there is no snow." And so Miami is full of tacky and goofy things, but it's full of people who really ask interesting questions and have done interesting things and lived interesting lives. And so I think it's a wonderful place to be in a certain way. It's besides the fact that the weather is pretty extraordinary.